Hi, I'm Rashonda Cade. This is Reading with Rashonda. We are reading The House Behind the Cedars by Charles Chesnutt. We started chapter 19 last time. We will continue chapter 19. It's conceivable we'll finish it, but I'm not going to put any money on that. Chapter 19 is titled God Made Us All, and let's dive right in. Listen, Rena, he said with a sudden impulse. We'll go to the north or west. I'll go with you, far away from the south and the southern people, and start life over again. It will be easier for you. It will not be hard for me. I am young and have means. There are no strong ties to bind me to the south. I would have a larger outlook elsewhere. Well, if that's not exactly what we were talking about when we finished last time, I was like, why don't they just leave the south and go someplace else? All right. And what about our mother? Asked Rena. Now there's the rub. It would be necessary to leave her behind, they both perceived clearly enough, unless they were prepared to surrender the advantage of their whiteness and drop back to the lower rank. The mother bore the mark of the Ethiopian, not pronouncedly, but distinctly. Neither would Miss Molly, in all probability, care to leave home and friends and the graves of her loved ones. She had no mental resources to supply the place of these. She was, moreover, too old to be transplanted. She would not fit into Warwick's scheme for a new life. I left her once, said Rena, and it brought pain and sorrow to all three of us. She is not strong, and I will not leave her here to die alone. This shall be my home while she lives, and if I leave it again, it shall be for only a short time to go where I can write to her freely and hear from her often. Don't worry about me, John. I shall do very well. I mean, and nobody wants to be morbid, but like she could stay with her mom until she dies and then go off and be white. I mean, there are lots of ways every situation can play out. I'm not saying I'm a proponent of one way or another, but let's think about all of our options, whether or not we like them. Warwick sighed. He was sincerely sorry to leave his sister, and yet he saw that for the time being her resolution was not to be shaken. He must bide his time. Perhaps in a few months she would tire of the old life. His door would always be open to her, and he would charge himself with her future. Well, then, he said, concluding the argument, we'll say no more about it for the present. I'll write to you later. I was afraid that you might not care to go back just now, and so I brought your trunk along with me. He gave his mother the baggage check. She took it across to Frank, who during the day brought the trunk from the depot. Miss Molly offered to pay him for the service, but he would accept nothing. Law, no, Miss Molly, I didn't have to go out of my way to get that trunk. I had a load of spirit barrels to haul to the still, and a depot was right on my way back. It'd be robbing you to take pay for a little thing like that. My son John's here, said Miss Molly, and he wants to see you. Come into the sitting room. We don't want folk to know he's in town, but you know all our secrets, and we can trust you like one of the family. I'm glad to see you again, Frank, said Warwick, extending his hand and clasping Frank's warmly. You've grown up you've grown up since I saw you last, but it seems you are still our good friend. Sounds like he's trying to butter his toast here. Our very good friend, interjected Rena. Be a good friend. Shh, mum's the word. Or be a good friend. It could go either way. It could go both. I don't know. Frank threw her a grateful glance. Yes, he said, looking Warwick over with a friendly eye, and you has growed some too. I see you, you know, down there where you live, but I didn't let on, for you and Miss Rena was white as anybody, and everybody said you was good to colored folks and helped them in their lawsuits in one way or another. And I was just plumb glad to see you getting along so fine that I was certain show and no mistake about it. Thank you, Frank. And I want you to understand how much I appreciate, how much we all appreciate, corrected Rena. I'm intrigued. Yes, how much we all appreciate and how grateful we all are for your kindness to Mother for so many years. I know from her and from my sister how good you've been to them. Laud, sir, returned Frank deprecatingly, you're making a mountain out in a molehill, out in a molehill. Out in a molehill. Okay, I'm sorry. Just really, okay, I'm sorry. Let me read that again. Lord, sir, returned Frank deprecatingly, you're making a mountain out in a molehill. I ain't done nothing to speak of, not half as much as I would have done. I was glad to do what little I could for friendship's sake. We hear the tenor under that too. I would have done more if I could, but this was all that I could do as a friend. Mm. Frank left the room and crossed the street with swelling heart. He would have given his life for Rena. A kind word was doubly sweet from her lips. No service would be too great to pay for her friendship. When Frank went out to the stable next morning to feed his mule, his eyes opened wide with astonishment. In place of the decrepit, one eyed army mule he had put up the night before, a fat, sleek specimen of vigorous mulehood greeted his arrival with the sonorous hee haw of lusty youth. Hanging on a peg nearby was a set of fine new harness, and standing under the adjoining shed as he perceived a handsome new cart. I mean, that's great. That's fantastic. But what did you do with his old mule? Well, well, exclaimed Frank, if I didn't most know what this mule and this cart and this harness come from, I'd 'low there'd been witchcraft and a conjun working here. But oh my, that is a fine mule. I must wush I could keep him. Oh, I most wush I could keep him. He crossed the road to the house behind the cedars and found Miss Molly in the kitchen. Miss Molly, he protested, I ain't done nothing to deserve that mule. What little I done for you wasn't done for pay. I'd rather not keep them things. For goodness sake, Frank, exclaimed his neighbor with a well simulated air of mystification. With a well simulated air of mystification. I love that. What are you talking about? Hmm. You knows what I'm talking about, Miss Molly. You knows well enough I'm talking about that fine mule and cart and harness over there in my stable. How should I know anything about 'em? She asked. Now, Miss Molly, you folks is just trying to fool me and make me take something for nothing. I left my old mule and cart and harness in the stable last night, and this morning they're gone and new ones in their place. Course you knows where they come from. Like, he's like, come on now, enough with the ruse. Well, now, Frank, since you mention it, I did see a witch. Really, I did see a witch. I did see a witch flying around here last night on a broomstick, and it appeared to me she lit on your barn, and I suppose she turned your old things into new ones. I wouldn't bother my mind about it if I was you, for she may turn 'em back any night, you know, and you might as well have the use of 'em in the meanwhile. That's all foolishness, Miss Molly, and I'm going to fetch that mule right over here and tell your son to give me my old one back. My son's gone, she replied, and I don't know nothing about your old mule. And what would I do with a mule anyhow? I ain't got no barn to put him in. I suspect you don't care much for us after all, Frank, said Rena reproachfully. She had come in while they were talking. You meet with a piece of good luck and you're afraid of it lest it might have come from us. Now, really, I think that's what he's about to say too. Now, Miss Rena, you oughtn't to say that, expostulated Frank, his reluctance yielding immediately. I'll keep the mule and the cart and the harness. Fact, I'll have to keep them because I ain't got no others. But they're going to be yown as much as mine. Whenever you wants anything hauled or wants your lot plowed or anything, that's yo mule and I'm yo man and yo mammy's. And to think that they didn't have that in mind when they did this would be foolish on our part. So Frank went back to the stable where he feasted his eyes on his new possessions, fed and watered the mule, and curried and brushed his coat until it shone like a looking glass. Now that, remarked Peter at the breakfast table when informed of the transaction, is something like real white folks. No real white person had ever given Peter a mule or a cart. Right, I was like, what real white folks are you talking about? He had rendered one of them unpaid service for half a lifetime and had paid for the other half, and some of them owed him substantial sums for work performed. But to him that hath shall be given. Warwick paid for the mule, and the real white folks got most of the credit. Look at us. We finished chapter 19. I kind of feel like going on a tangent about what's a real white folk, but hey, we've done enough of that. I'm happy we finished this chapter in 2 readings. This is The House Behind the Cedars by Charles Chesnutt. I'm Rashonda Cade, and this is Reading with Rashonda.